Let's talk about division, and eventually we'll get to division with decimals. But I'm going to start out with a problem in which we're working with whole numbers. Previously, when we talked about division and we had a remainder, we created a fraction. And so I'm going to do an example, and then I'll show you how we would also do that same problem. But instead of creating a fraction remainder, we'll create a decimal remainder. Let's say we have 198, and I want to divide that by 12. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. The first number, our dividend, goes under the division sign. The second number is the divisor, that's on the outside. Okay, now we'll go ahead and divide. 12 doesn't go into 1, but it will go into the 19 one whole time. And that leaves us 12. Find the difference is 7. Bring down the 8. Now I know 6 times 12 is 72. So I'll subtract that from 78 and I get 6 left over. Now previously we would take this 6 and bring it up, and then that would become our numerator, and then the divisor would be our denominator. Now we could reduce 16 and 6/12 because 6 goes evenly into 12, so that would become 16 and 1/2. But let's go ahead and work this same problem. Instead of making that 6 into a fraction, let's change it into a decimal. I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite and do the problem and get to this point again, okay? So we've got 1, 12, 7, 6, 72, and we've got that 6. Okay. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and add a decimal point. And we're going to add a 0. And we're going to bring down that 0 and add it to the 6. Now we have 60. How many times does 12 go into 60? 5 times. Now 5 times 12 is in fact 60. And when we take the difference, we don't get, we're done. We don't have anything left. So our final answer would be 16 and 5/10. Now 16 and 5/10 is equivalent to 16 and 1/2. And if you saw the video or in the lesson, if you were in class, we talked about changing a fraction to a decimal. Okay? Basically, we divide the numerator by the denominator. Okay, and we can't do that, so we add a decimal point and then we divide. So 5/10 is going to be equivalent to 1/2. And so when we get a decimal that looks like this, we know that it's also equivalent to an answer that has a fraction remainder. Now let's go ahead and work with some problems in which we're going to get a decimal answer, similar to this one here. Let's say we have 39 and we're going to divide it by 4. Again, there are no decimal points other than on the end, and we don't really need to write those out. So 39 divided by 4. Well, I know 4 times 9 is 36. When I take the difference, I get 3 left over. Instead of making it 9 3/4 like we did in that first problem, I'm going to add a decimal point and a 0 and bring that 0 down. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. Because I don't have a 0 here, I have to add another 0 and bring it down. 4 goes into 25 times, and 4 times 5 is in fact 20. So now that I'm at 0, I can call it quits, and this will be my final answer. And this makes sense. When I do a little estimating, if I were to round this to 40 and I divided it by 4, I would have 10 groups, okay? Or 10 items in 4 groups. And since this is just below 40, my answer is going to be 9. 9 and almost 10. Okay, let's do some more. What if we have 14 and 4/10 divided by 9? Notice that the dividend has a decimal in it. If I were to do a little estimating first before I did the actual math, I can guess that 9 goes into 14 at least one whole time, maybe a little bit more. So I could write it out like that. These wavy lines here mean approximately. Let's go ahead and do the math. 14 and 4/10 divided by 9. Now, when your dividend has a decimal point in it, you want to bring that up into your quotient. Now we're going to pretty much ignore it and just do the division. 9 goes into 14 one whole time, and that's going to be 9. When we subtract, we get 5 left over, and I want to bring down the 4. 9 goes into 54 6 times, and I know for a fact that 6 times 9 is 54. So I no longer have a remainder. So my answer to this problem is 1 6/10. And notice that it is approximately 1. A little bit more, but pretty close to 1. Let's do some more problems. Let's say we have 134 and 4/10 divided by 14. Now, if I were to do a little estimating, I'm going to say it's going to be less than 10. If this were 140 and I were dividing it by 14, then that would be 10. But because this is slightly smaller than 140, I'm going to say it's going to be about 9. Let's go ahead and do the math now. Because the dividend has the decimal point, I want to bring that up into my answer. Now I can pretty much ignore it. 14 does not go into 134, or not 10 times. I'm going to say at least 9 times. And since I don't really know what 14 times 9, I'm going to do a little side math. Looks like it's going to be 126. I'm going to go ahead and subtract, and I get 8 left over. I need to bring down that 4. How many times does 14 go into 84? Again, I really don't know my 14s, so I need to do a little math. I could do a little estimating. If I were to round this to 15, and I know 15 goes into 90, how many times would 15 go into 90? Well, I know it goes into 30 twice, and 2 more would be 60, and 2 more would be 90. So I'm going to guess that 14 goes into 84 6 times. Let's see what happens when we do that. It's going to be 24. It's going to be 84. Hey, right on the money. And you could see that 9 6/10 is less than 10, because we, in our estimation, we kind of had an idea that it would be less than 10. Looks like it's close to 10, but not quite. It is indeed less than 10. All right, let's do another one where our dividend has a decimal point. Let's say we have 364 16 and 2/10, and we're going to divide that by 5. Because I have a decimal point in my dividend, I need to bring it up. Now I can ignore it. 5 goes into 31 6 times. That'd be 30. I'm going to subtract, and I get 1. I need to bring down that 6. 5 goes into 16 3 times, because 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract, I get 1 left over, and I'm going to bring down that 2. And 5 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Again, I want to subtract. I get 2 left over. Because I have a remainder here, I need to add another 0, or add a 0 after the 2 and bring that down. Looks like 5 goes into 20 evenly 4 times. So I don't need to add any more zeros because now I'm at 0 remainder. My answer is 63 and 24 hundredths. Okay, now let's talk about what happens when the divisor has a decimal point. Let's say we have 29 divided by 4/10. 29 divided by 4/10. I'm going to go ahead and set it up. Now notice there's no decimal point in the dividend. And you might have problems where you do, but in this particular problem you don't. However, there is a decimal point in the divisor. To make it easy, what we're going to do is move that decimal point over 1 place, essentially putting it behind the last digit in our number. Because we want to keep the value of this problem the same, we want to put at the decimal point after the last digit in 29 and then move or put a 0 in there as a placeholder so we can move the decimal point over in the dividend. Once we have our decimal point, we're going to bring that up. What we're essentially doing is we're taking 4/10 and we're multiplying it by 10. When we multiply that, that's going to give us 0 and 4. And because we have 1 decimal place, we are now able to divide by 4, which is a whole number, not a decimal number. When we take 29 and multiply that by 10, we're going to get 290. So notice we haven't really changed the problem. All we've done is we've moved the decimal place over 1 in both the divisor and the dividend. Let's go ahead and divide now. And I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this because I kind of created a mess here. So let me rewrite that. We've got 4 and 290. Now 4 goes into 29 7 times. That's going to give us 28. 1 left over, bring down the 0. 4 goes into 10 twice, and we've got that's going to be 8. Subtract, and we get 2. We need to add a 0 and bring it down. 4 goes into 25 times, and that's going to be the end of that. We don't have anything left. So our answer is 72 and 5/10. Let's go ahead and do one more. Let's say we have 648 divided by 9/100. Now I imagine the number is going to be pretty big. 9/100 is a very small number, and 648 is kind of a big number. I forgot to put my decimal point there. Let's go ahead and rewrite that. That's 648 divided by 0.09. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of multiplying by 10, I'm going to basically be multiplying by 100. And if I do the multiplication by 100 on the divisor side, I have to do the same thing over here. Now the shortcut version is just move the decimal place over until you get to the very end. And since we're moving it over 2 places, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to add our decimal point and make 2 swoops, reposition our decimal point, and then plug in some zeros as placeholders. So now we're dividing 64,800 by 9, which again is going to give us a really big number. So now instead of, and if this helps to cross this out so that you can see that you're just dividing by 9, you can certainly do that. 9 does not go into 6, but it does go into 64. I think 7 times. 7 times 9 is 63. I'm going to subtract and bring down the 8. Well, 9 goes into 18 twice. That was really easy, and that's going to give us 18. Now, notice we don't have to bring down any other zeros. We're still going to get zeros. So if you have a space between your last digit and the decimal, go ahead and plug in some zeros as placeholders. Okay? So 648 divided by 9/100 is going to give you 7,200. And like I said, it was going to be a big number. We'll do more in class, but that's basically how you're going to set up these problems. If you have a decimal point in your divisor, you must move it. And we saw that in this case, and again in this first one. If you have a decimal point only in the dividend, like this one, we just bring it up. We don't need to be moving things around.